Welcome to this is Deja Vu all over again edition of Sharing Sox. I'm duty geezer Leigh Allan. With me, my son and usually West Coast correspondent, but for the next month or so, Ohio Valley correspondent Will, who was in Cincinnati to do a play called Birthday Candles, which apparently you'll all want to see if you really need a good cry.
That's right. And as White Sox fans, fortunately,
We're
always
good
have
at
a
crying.
reason to cry. Yeah.
We're recording this on the 17th, Thursday morning, after the two losses to Oakland before the final game of the Oakland series, which will be, and could be a very important day for the future, Edgar Quero's first major league game was brought up on Wednesday night. And he's supposed to be in the starting line. He's supposed to start today. So we'll hope that goes well. And Quero, for me, of all the at least position players, maybe all, he's the one prospect that I wondered before we got him.
Yeah.
Before they actually traded for him, there's going to be, you got to get Edgar Quero. This guy sounds terrific. And so far, I've actually been right about something, which is very rare. And he's been terrific in the minors. He's got incredible OPS. I got to say, I can't imagine for anybody having the first major league game, pitcher, position player of any other type, it's rough. And it can stay rough. Look at Nick Madrigal, was just totally overwhelmed by the speed of the game when he made that one adjustment. But for a catcher, with all the things that you have to know and do and work with the pitchers. Now, fortunately, I don't know how much he's Davis Martin, I think, I know is pitching. So I don't know how much he has worked with Davis Martin, but probably some, because Martin was down in the minors for rehab and stuff. I hope they've had some time together. But the starting pitching, at least, is so young, other than Martin Perez, that the rest he will have had time with and spent time with in the minors. So he'll have some familiarity with what they throw and what signs there are when things are going wrong, that kind of thing. But I really wish him well.
I think, if we were an organization that had invested in analytics and cared about those things, he'd probably be in really great shape as a catcher coming up. Definitely seems like the kind of guy who's putting the work in. So I'm sure he is taking care of those things his own way. I'm really excited to see his debut. In fact, I think, weirdly, let's start with some positivity this time, because obviously we're going to get into how things are going in reality. The guys who we need to show signs of hope for the future are showing signs of hope for the future. The guys who we absolutely do not plan on having in a White Sox uniform in 2027, 2028, they are showing no signs of being good baseball players.
But I was thinking not only the signs, what I was thinking on that same point was, I know we're going to get the injury moans, because you always get the injury moans, which is baloney, because you've always been about average, and really on pitching, a much better situation. Last year, there were teams that had 7 starting pitchers out. It was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. Look at the Dodgers this year. Starters are already falling. Yeah.
But the injuries that other than Corey Lee, who may be part of the future and may not, because you've got 2 outstanding catchers come up. He's kind of catcher number 3. He may be trade bait.
Yeah.
The other injuries, Tauchman and Slater, Benintendi and Rojas, 3 of those are on 1-year contracts. These guys are all over 30. Benintendi, you're stuck with for 2 more years after this year. But none of those guys are the future. They're right. And what it means, not good for the record necessarily. They might have won a couple more games if all those guys were healthy, but it won't matter. It's a matter of whether you lose 105 or 125. It's just immaterial, except for the record books. But it's allowed younger guys to play. That's why Chase Meidroth is up. You needed an extra guy in the infield. It's why Brooks Baldwin is getting playing time in the corner outfield slots,
Yeah.
and getting to play more. And he's been one of and those two guys, they're kind of fun to watch. There was, I think it was ESPN did a watchability index the other day. And as in every other index, the White Sox were dead last. Those guys are kind of watchable. They may be the only watchable guys on the, well, no, Amaya is watchable, but unfortunately, he doesn't even hit the usual 180.
Well, we've got pitchers who are watchable right now. We've got starting pitchers who are watchable, and while they're not necessarily going out every time and shutting people down, they are kind of where you want young pitchers to be at this point. And they're doing some interesting things. We're seeing some good outings from these young starters. I mean, obviously, to start the season, they were on the White Sox version of a tear. The starters were of giving up no runs over 17 straight innings or whatever that was. It's pretty impressive. I will say, and my various White Sox and baseball text threads talk about how even though this team is terrible so far, it does feel like a different terrible than last year. And last year, watching, the ship go down was just total implosion, total devastation, garbage preparation, garbage playing, garbage everything. This year, you're seeing signs of guys who are wanting to be good. And you're seeing it from Chase. You're seeing it from Baldwin as well. And that's important. I think there's a cultural change happening in the dugout and in the clubhouse. And, everyone's saying, Venable can get them to 500. He's a lock for manager of the year. Well, that's obviously not going to happen.
If he could get them to 100 losses, he may be a lock for manager of the year.
And I've actually read things that said, if the White Sox have 99 losses, he's going to be manager of the year. But it does seem like there's a fire under their butts and they're just not ready to play Major League Baseball. Like they are on their way to being actual everyday Major League Baseball players, and they're trying to win games. I think the thing last year was it never felt like anyone was trying to win a game. Every time you watched them on TV, it was sluggish. It was boring. There was no excitement whatsoever. I mean, the two walk-off wins or whatever had a brief moment of excitement, but you're starting to see guys who want to win baseball games. And even honestly, Benintendi is playing a little bit more like he wants to stay in Major League Baseball, which is something he should be trying to prove right now.
Yeah, it's early enough yet, excuse me, that they have not been worn down. The youngsters have not been worn down by the losing. I mean, once you've lost 100 games, you got to be dragged. I don't care who you are, how much you love baseball, how much you love. All of these guys came up through their lives playing to win. None of them were casual about baseball through their lives, so they're not in the major leagues. But it can wear you down. So we'll see what that effect is. But for right now, yeah, I mean, guys like Baldwin and Meidroth's only played with 3 or 4 games at this point. And there may be others that come up. They're still not position players in the system. They're just aren't. Yeah. And Colson Montgomery, I think this is the last chance. I think he's done after this year.
I know.
And if he doesn't turn something around in a hurry, and it doesn't look like that's happening, I think he's through.
Yeah, I mean, Colson Montgomery, of course, I think we mentioned last time, ESPN had him of the people who would not be on an opening day roster, the most likely to win Rookie of the Year. I don't know where they got that. I don't know why they think that. They've been high on Montgomery for ages, and I think that is actually already out the window. Like I just don't think there's any chance of that happening. But I do think Montgomery's on the clock. we just haven't seen enough from him to justify him being an everyday Major League Baseball player, and guys are passing him coming up. Guys keep
It's not
passing.
like it's impossible to suddenly bloom. Look at Torkelson in Detroit. I mean,
Right.
that guy was a disaster. Number one overall pick, disaster year after year after year. And suddenly this year, wow. So it can happen, but
Yeah, of course
it
with
doesn't happen
Torkelson,
often.
it's also April 17th.
Yeah.
So, this some people can get off to a hot start because the pitchers haven't quite gotten in their groove yet.
Well, that's
I'm
right.
not
You change your batting stance and they have to change how they pitch you, and adjustments have to be
exactly.
made, and it's
I
all
don't think
part of the
any
game.
pitchers are I don't think any pitchers are stepping on the mound against Torkelson right now and going, "Oh no, this is a guy to be scared of now." But that doesn't mean that they're correct about that. Maybe he is a guy you should be scared of now. But I actually, I've watched a handful of games and watched highlights from all the games if there are highlights that feature White Sox
It can be
players.
short.
um, one thing that I think is going to be interesting this year, as we talk about being at the bottom, is that I don't know that we're going to be at the absolute bottom because the Rockies
Are
are
so bad.
so terrible that they are going to be in this race to 122 with the White Sox the whole step of the way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I've watched some of the Rockies, and of course they are completely outmatched this past series against the Dodgers, but they got swept by the Padres and the Dodgers, which of course are the two best teams in Major League Baseball right now. There's no surprise there. But just kind of brutal, embarrassing, terrible ways to lose
Plus, I
baseball
mean,
games.
they've got to play in the National League West, where the other four teams are all really good.
Yeah, yeah.
and,
I mean,
and
their
so
season's
their
over.
schedule
Yeah,
is much. Whereas I got to say, the AL Central is reverting to form. They
yeah,
had the big year last year where I'd say three of the other teams were really good and the other one was okay. And now they're all just terrible because they did nothing. Nobody in that division did anything over the offseason.
yeah. Tigers made some
They didn't
minor
even hold
moves.
their place.
Yeah, I think the AL Central is completely up for grabs with anyone but the White Sox right now. I think we it's April 17th. We still have no idea what these teams are actually going to look like uh, throughout the remainder of the season. This is such a small sample size, and the least valuable sample size that you can get through the whole season is the very beginning. But I mean, I truly think the AL Central's up for grabs. And in my pool, I took Kansas City. But watching Kansas City right now, I'm like, why did I take Kansas City? I have no idea. But then you watch Cleveland, you watch the Tigers, you watch the Twins, and you're like, I don't know why I would take any of them either. I think it was just sort of put a blindfold on, put the teams on a wall, and see which one your finger lands on between the four of those. Uh, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the Rockies, unfortunately, are absolutely doomed because they got no signs of good things happening or good things coming. But the White Sox kind of do. I see a world where this team actually has a couple decent stretches throughout the season. I definitely think they're going to lose 100 games, but I'm not necessarily where I was, a month ago, thinking that they're absolutely going to break last year's record. But that's also me being optimistic. This happens every single year with this team. I come on before the season and I say we're going to be the worst team in history. And then one guy gets a single, and I'm like, well, I don't know now. I don't know. Maybe we're a sleeper World Series contender. I can tell you this, I'm going to win a fortune off of bets with my friends if we win that World Series. An absolute fortune.
Yes,
I'm
I
only going to
think you can retire.
only going to lose $3 if they don't. But if they do it, I'm going to be one really, really wealthy guy. So I hope that happens.
I have watched a lot of games, and strangely, on the eyeball, that the defense looks better. When I look at the stats, it's not so much different. The error rate is exactly as last year, which is not by any means the be all and end all, but the range statistics, the RTOT in baseball reference, no better, and it's not good. The defensive runs saved is neutral, except that they actually it's positive, but they down added categories of positioning, so they're getting positive points for infield positioning and outfield positioning. Otherwise, it's a wash. But that's kind of interesting. At least the positioning's right. That speaks to better coaching and management than they had. Well, we know than they had a year ago. Yeah, there is a different feel. I don't know. I was thinking, oh boy, they're actually hitting the cutoff man every time, and I think just it was last night or the night before. No, they didn't. And the guy went to second base and scored. It.
I mean, I will say defensively, they're sitting. Yeah, I think they're at 984 is the fielding percentage right now, and they're sitting a hundredth of a point off from being tied for fifth or whatever in baseball. But being down that hundredth of a point, they're tied for like next to last or something like that. Defense as a whole in Major League Baseball this year has not been impressive. It's been a very slow start defensively. You're seeing a lot of mistakes all over the league. The good teams and the bad teams, they're winning with offense right now. We're not seeing a lot of impressive defense being played.
Red Sox had 5 errors against the White Sox the other day. Now, 2 of them were catcher's interference, but you're not supposed to have catcher's interference either.
And probably at the beginning of the season, that's probably a trend that I just haven't paid much attention to. I would assume at the beginning of the season, teams are colder. The weather is colder for half the league on any given day. Defense is harder in cold weather. It just is. Seeing a lot of errant throws around the league. A lot of errant throws, whether it's missing cutoffs or throwing to first base and pulling the first baseman off. You're seeing a lot of that right now. I do think that will level out, and I do think the White Sox will find a more firm footing toward the bottom of the defensive ratings in all of baseball by the end of the season. But no panic button on defense right now, but it's certainly not something where it's like, oh, well, we can't hit, but we'll get them back with D.
Yeah. Hitting, on the other hand, they're only 29th instead of 30th. The Pirates, depends on your category, whether it's average or on base percentage or slugging or whatnot. They're 29th in everyone's. Last year, they were 30th. But the stats are worse. The team batting team and every team. Yeah, look at the box scores, and every team will have guys in their starting lineup with a 1 in front of their batting average. And some will have multiples, and some of those will be stars who are going to hit later on. But the Sox the other night started first 5 guys in the lineup with 1s in front of their batting average.
Yeah.
And the team batting average is 200, even 200. They're 29th just because the Pirates are so bad, but that's 20 points lower than last year, which was unbelievably bad.
And it's 80 points lower than the league leader in batting average.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty massive gap. In this era where people don't care about batting average, 80 points is a massive difference between you and the first place team.
And of course, there are only 2, which is another thing. There are only 2 players that essentially have a position. All these younger guys are kind of rotating between second, short, and third. Miguel Vargas has more playing time than anybody on the team. That's a little strange. And then the left and right fields are even without the injuries, rotating and changing time. But the 2 and the catchers naturally flip because that's what catchers do. But the 2 with the position, and boy, you've got the position, and it's your position, are Luis Robert and Andrew Vaughn. Right. And you add them together, and they're hitting 277.
Right. Yeah. Add them. Literally add them. Yeah.
I mean, they're horrible.
I am
Vaughn
going to
had a
stop
third.
you there.
Yeah.
We have overshot our break here, so let's go
Okay.
ahead. It's just so exciting to talk about the White Sox that we've overshot our break. So let's take a quick break, and we'll come back. And the reason I'm stopping here is we need to talk about Luis Robert. We haven't talked about Luis Robert yet today. So we will take a quick break, and we will talk about Luis Robert and what could be going on there. So hang in there. We'll be right back on Sharing Sox. Welcome back to Sharing Sox. We spoke with mild positivity in the first half. And now we're starting to talk about Andrew Vaughn and Luis Robert. Andrew Vaughn is hardly worth talking about, in my opinion. But Luis Robert, ESPN, another article saying that Luis Robert is potentially going to be the biggest and most desired player at the trade deadline.
With an OPS of 43.
Where are they getting this?
OPS plus.
And they're busting out these percentiles. He's in the 90 something percentile in speed, 90 something percentile in outfield range, 90 something percentile in exit velocity. Well, exit velocity doesn't really matter if the bat doesn't touch the baseball. Right now, I don't know what you can get for him. I'm sure other teams who think that there's a possibility he can turn the corner are foaming at the mouth by how little they're going to have to give up for Luis Robert. But as it stands right now, the idea that the White Sox are going to get any return for this guy is delusional. Any return of value for the future it's just not there. We said before the season started, the thing you need more than anything is for Luis Robert to come out and have a hot April. Well, of course, we have gotten the absolute opposite of that. He's just been abysmal at the plate.
He finally hit a homer, his first homer since early August of last year. He hit the other day, and I was covering that game, so I was watching every pitch carefully, and it was an absolute cripple. It was a case where the starting pitcher, Boston's starting pitcher, got hurt and had to leave the game. He was mowing him down, but he pulled something in his shoulder and left the game. In comes a reliever who's got all the time in the world. It happened to be a big crowd at the rate because they were giving away these fantastic throwback hoodies that are worth far more than the price of a ticket. So it had a big crowd, like 30,000. So here's this guy. He's got all the time. You're allowed. I mean, you can take all the time you want, but in front of 30,000 people who are screaming for you to get on with it, you probably don't take all the time you need. So he came in. He was in the middle of, I think he came in on a 2-2 count on Miguel Vargas. Didn't come close on those two pitches. Vargas walks, goes to Robert, 2-0 count, pitches nowhere close, and throws a cripple, an absolute cripple. It was a fastball, like just below the belt, middle of the plate. I couldn't hit it because I'm 78, but you might, it was too fast for an ordinary person. It was like 96 and 97 miles an hour, but
yeah, I'm probably not catching up to it.
But it was right there, no movement, no nothing. And Luis clobbered it. Well, that's good, but you don't get those very often, especially if you're a player who is known. Why you would throw him anything once, well, of course, it was a 2-0 count, so that's why he was getting that pitch. But, you get ahead, he'll swing at the first pitch. It can be bad, usually. And then you strike him out on the slider that's somewhere between home and first.
He also,
and he's
to be honest,
I mean, I've covered numerous games, so I'm watching carefully, and it's the same problems. It's the same problems. And I think anybody do this isn't like brilliant interpretation. He doesn't recognize pitches.
Yeah.
He has not learned to recognize pitches
at all.
And that's either something you can or can't do. And at this point of his career, is he suddenly going to notice the spin on a slider? It seems unlikely.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an eyesight thing or if it's just the
maybe
to recognize them, but he's not seeing it. And honestly, the one home run actually wasn't clobbered. It was kind of one of those, like, he's watching it off the bat, and then it's like, oh crud, I better run. It was one
Yeah, I
of
think it went
those.
into the right field bullpen.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was pretty close. So he's, to have an exit velo percentile in the 90s, high 90s, I think even. I think they said he was at like 97th percentile in exit velo in Major League Baseball, which is elite. I mean, that is absolutely elite. And to have his strength and to have his exit velocities, to have one home run on April 17th, I mean, what team is looking for that? What team? You have to have a hitting coach on another team somewhere that says, I know how to fix this guy. I know how to get that ball out of the ballpark. Because as it stands right now, he is not valuable if he's not hitting the ball out of the ballpark. He
well,
just is not.
with his speed, he would be valuable if he was consistently hitting line drives. He's not. He's
Yes,
consistently
yes,
hitting groundouts
yes,
when
and
he
no.
hits it.
If this were 1997, absolutely. But we're talking about modern Major League Baseball. And
Well, it depends what team he goes to. I mean, on the
right,
White Sox, they're desperate of need of somebody to drive in runs. There are teams that have that and don't have
true.
the run to be driven in.
Yeah, I mean, if he were to go to one of the contenders, he's probably batting, right now 7th or 8th in the lineup. And to have a guy with that potential power and all of that speed in that spot can be very valuable. But he doesn't even get on base. He doesn't walk. His on base percentage is in the 200s. I think it's around like
Around
240,
250. Yeah.
250. What are you going to do with a guy whose on base percentage is 250, who's not hitting the ball out of the ballpark? It's really, really, really bad. The Luis Robert Jr. situation is really bad because this is a guy we've been just holding on to over and over again in hopes that we can get some major package return on him, and
Yeah.
it's just not going to happen right now.
I can remember during spring training, and I don't think it was a podcast. I think I just texted you. He had a really good game. He was very hot the first half of spring training, but of course you're hitting minor leaguers or major leaguers who are just kind of stretching out. So the pitching's pretty relative to real major. Go for it, major league pitching. It's easy.
Yeah.
Easier. Let's say easier. And he had a really big day. And I think I texted you and said, trade him now. Trade him before morning.
Yeah.
Do it now. And I was right.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've had various times. Now, obviously, great hindsight at the end of the 2023 season. You could have gotten a haul for Luis Robert.
Absolutely.
I mean, a haul. And I think Luis, he's a very quiet guy. I think it's just one of those, he wears his heart in his hands kind of thing. And when you are playing it with a team that's as miserable as this, and you yourself, you're not doing well. If you're that kind of guy, you can kind of internalize. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, even before 2023, you go back and he was stuck between two god awful outfielders. And he just kind of gave up out there.
Yeah.
He would have Vaughn at left and Sheets and right or something like that. And he had to cover baseline to baseline. He just kind of said, "Well, the heck with it, I can't do this," and didn't do things he usually can do. So I think there's a mental aspect to it that
without a doubt
down. And I do think, even though we talk about another coach has to see. Yes, I know what he's doing with how he holds his hands or anything like that. And it'd be interesting if he got glasses like, look what it did for Raylo, and he's just a pitcher. He don't have to see the spin on it.
Lots of guys.
I think other coaches will consider that mentality. I think it's not like, oh boy, I've got brilliant insight. Everybody has that insight who watches him. I think there are going to be managers, general managers out there who say, if this guy can be enthusiastic about baseball again, he's going to be a star again. And I think that's very possible.
It's very possible, but enthusiasm is not a metric. And in this day and age of baseball, you can't sit around and go, well, his on-base percentage is 250, but if you add enthusiasm, it's 389. It's not measurable, and it's too, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Giving up big prospects is you're gambling on the future of your own organization. If it's not measurable, I just don't know that anybody is going to be willing to give up anything for this. And it's not that the future of the White Sox depends on this, but I will say your rebuild is slower if you're not able to flip this guy that you've been planning on flipping. And I agree with what you're saying. I think the fact that he's gone through multiple regimes now and is not able to figure this out, that hurts as well, because originally you can say, okay, well, whoever his coach is, whoever his hitting coach is, whoever his strength coach is, those guys just don't get it. They don't get it. But now we're starting to get through a lot of these guys, and a lot of them have a lot of the techniques and information that the other teams and other coaches around the league have, and it's still not developing. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
They've even caught up with modern baseball and gotten a traject, which they've had since spring training. So he's had obviously umpteen million chances to work with that. And we're talking about the machine that is an incredible imitation of any pitcher. They're all in there. There's a video of the pitcher. You've got exactly how he throws the ball. You got the exact spin he puts on the ball. You've got if his slider normally breaks 6 inches, it breaks 6 inches out of this machine. So he's got that chance to learn more about pitch identification, and it has not helped.
Has not helped at all.
I think when we talk monetary cost of somebody taking Luis, it's not that big. In that, the next 2 years are team options.
Right.
So if you got him tomorrow, and you're stuck with the salary for the rest of this year, but it's not that huge for Major League Baseball teams, particularly contenders who have not White Sox. White Sox has a salary level that's the same as a McDonald's, but you're not stuck with those two. If you take Benintendi, you're stuck.
Right.
But if you take Robert, you only have to go through this year. Now, if you do what you think you can do, and playing for a team that's good, and what we've seen here with the way his elbow sticks out, whatever it may be, then you keep him. You're great. He's pretty cheap for a superstar.
He's a steal if you can turn him around. But
I think it's gamble in that case. It's a case of what they give up. And I know the Dodgers apparently were in talks for a long time and just finally said to hell with it, that the White Sox want too much.
I mean, no one's going to get, if you view it as so much of a gamble, and I get what you're saying of, okay, we got team options for the next 2 years, so we don't have to keep him. I mean, the money is almost irrelevant.
What's relevant is what the White Sox are demanding in prospects, which is what they have to have. That's right. What they're in desperate need of. The shortstop would be nice.
But who's going to give up a guy when the mindset is, well, we don't have to keep him? Like, who's going to give up a lot for that?
No, they're not. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be different if he was really good right now, and then you would be like, okay, well, we don't have to keep him if this is a fluke, but we can give something up for him now. He's hot. It's looking good. It's looking like he's turned the corner. But right now, it's like if you're taking Luis Robert, it is such a gamble. And I actually kind of believe what you believe, which is put him on a contender. And I was telling someone this yesterday. I was talking baseball with him, and I was like, look, I think, if somehow Luis Robert, we'll use the Dodgers as an example, if somehow Luis Robert ends up on the Dodgers, I actually think you're going to see a shocking turnaround, when you put him in a clubhouse where he isn't the most important guy by far. He isn't the better.
Yeah, that's another thing. You remove the pressure of being the star if you're on a team with at least one other and preferably a couple other stars. Or in the case of the Dodgers, 30 of them. But if the pressure is off, I think he will be much better.
Yeah, I mean, you send him to the Yankees, you send him to the Dodgers, you send him to the Padres. He's not batting in the top 5 in those lineups. So that immediately alleviates pressure. He can become a little bit more of a role player. He can work with better coaches in successful organizations. I think that is when you see the turnaround. I certainly think if you throw him in the outfield for any of those teams, his defense will go back to elite first. I think you put him out there with superstars who play hard, who know how to win, who have absolute discipline in the clubhouse. I think the defense is going to come back immediately because most of the defensive stuff that he's been dealing with, the decline in defense, has felt motivation based. There's nothing out there that says,
particularly the throwing. I think that's he's always had the problem of moonballing some stuff, but I think it's gotten worse.
But put him in a clubhouse with Soto, or put him in a clubhouse with Judge, put him in a clubhouse with, in the ideal scenario for Luis Robert, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman, who are probably the best clubhouse leaders in all of baseball, you're going to play a different game. You absolutely are. But teams can't gamble on that necessarily because you just don't know if he's going to turn it around with his personal game. You know that he's going to be motivated differently, but you just don't know, especially with the offense. I think the defense will absolutely come back. It will.
Another team that's been mentioned that it's not at the top of the heap at all, but has its own superstar that might kind of cover it. And you were sitting there in Cincinnati. They've been mentioned several times as a Luis Robert possibility because they need some hitting and they need a center fielder. Anything in Cincinnati? Any vibes out there anymore, or is that just a gone thing too?
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about it out here. We're in Ellie De La Cruz country, so that's really all people talk about out here is Ellie De La Cruz.
I guarantee you that's all your nephew talks about.
yeah, and a splash of Hunter Green because he's looking pretty great as well. But yeah, I just don't know where it is. I think the rest of April and May is going to kind of determine it for Luis and for the White Sox. Is once you get to June, if you start getting good in June, that helps, but it's still going to be that you could attribute that to just like a decent streak. He's got to start laying a foundation here. That is all the time we have for this week, though.
And we never talked about trade value of Andrew Vaughn.
I think if we just say nothing for the next 3 seconds, we will cover that. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so we have discussed the trade value of Andrew Vaughn, which is essentially nothing. But yeah, any final thoughts before we close this one out?
No, I'm looking forward. I'm covering the game today with the first Edgar Quero game. By the time anybody listens to or sees this, it will be done. I hope it was a really good day. It starts out his career because the catching is the one position where the future looks really good.
Yeah, it does, and I hope he's great. I would love for him to be great. I want this to be a big success for the White Sox and for Quero, who has patiently waited for his time, and I think his time is now. So good luck to him, and we'll see how this goes over the next stretch, and we'll catch you next time right here on Sharing Sox.